Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, welcome to a new episode of The Quran and Science. With you, Tamer Mumtaz. Welcoming our professor, Dr. Zaghloul Al-Najjar, Head of Committee on Scientific Facts in the Glorious Quran, Supreme Council on Islamic Affairs, and our dear friends, Brother Fuad and Brother Mustafa. In this episode, we'll be speaking about the emitted and reflected light. But before we go on with this, we'll first hear a recitation of the ayah number 5 from Surah Yunus, the verse that deals with our topic.
هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب.
It is He who made the sun a radiating body with light, and the moon reflected light, and established stages for it, that you may know the number of years and the reckoning of time.
Professor Zaghloul, the emitted and reflected light. You told us that in English there is only the word light.
Yes.
How is this different from what we find in Quran?
In the name of Allah, our Creator, the Creator of the universe and of everything that's in it, I greet you all and your audience in our Islamic way. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
May Allah's peace, blessings and mercy be with you all. One of the testimonies for the scientific precision of the glorious Quran is the distinction between reflected light and transmitted light. This distinction was not known to man until probably the 19th century, beginning 20th century, and up till now not many people can distinguish between a reflected light and an emitted light.
Who found that out?
The study of light goes back to the days of Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, probably in the 12th century. And he could distinguish because he is one of the founders of the science of optics. And this goes back to that date, but of course, before that, many people could not distinguish between emitted light and transmitted light and reflected light. So only recently we came to realize that the energy coming from stars, like the sun, are the product of a very complicated process called nuclear fusion. And nuclear fusion means that the atoms of light elements like hydrogen fuse together by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He creates certain cyclones within the nebulae, and the pressure of these cyclones are so immense that it can compel the nuclei of hydrogen atoms to fuse together. And as they fuse together, they produce the nuclei of heavier elements. Hydrogen leads to helium. Helium leads to lithium. Lithium leads to beryllium, and so on, by the process called nuclear fusion.
That process needs a huge amount of energy.
Yes, yes. Because you see, to produce an atom of helium, you have to use 4 atoms of hydrogen.
Yes.
The total mass of 4 atoms of hydrogen is more than the mass of an atom of helium.
Yes.
And the difference in mass comes out as radiated energy, electromagnetic waves. So the process of nuclear fusion was only realized very recently, and this has led to the theory of the synthesis of elements. And all elements we know of are synthesized, are created, are produced in the hearts of stars by this process of nuclear fusion. Lighter nuclei fuse together to produce heavier nuclei, and heavier nuclei produced together to produce much heavier nuclei, and so on.
So all elements come out to one element.
All elements stem from hydrogen.
Okay.
And this is again a direction to the unity of the Creator.
Yes.
They call this the origination of elements.
The origination of elements.
All elements are created from hydrogen. And of course, this points out to the unity of the Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
The hydrogen atom itself is composed of a proton carrying a positive electric charge, and an electron carrying an equal negative charge, so that it can give the atom a neutral status. So duality is in the atom, but the fact that all elements are created from hydrogen points to the unity of the Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the process of nuclear fusion can produce electromagnetic waves, and electromagnetic waves contain different wavelengths. Starts by gamma rays, then X-rays, then ultraviolet rays, then visible light and rays, and then infrared rays and radio waves. And all this, each of these waves or rays has got its own wavelength. And because most of these wavelengths are invisible, and even the ones that are called visible light cannot be seen clearly except in the lower atmosphere of the Earth, where these different wavelengths are reflected several times on gas molecules, on water vapor, on small solid particles in the lower atmosphere, and that's why they produce this beautiful white color of the day, or white light of the day. Of course, if we look into the upper atmosphere, once you are above 200 kilometers above sea level, you'll see the sun as a blue spot in a dark sky, absolutely dark sky. And that's why the multiple reflection of the sun rays in the lower atmosphere to give us the beautiful white light of the day is a great mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is showing us this glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many Quranic verses. Similarly, at night, the sun rays are reflected from the surface of the moon. The moon has got a glassy layer that was created by the impact of meteorites on the moon. So the impact is so hard that it can melt, cause rocks to melt. And as they melt, they form glass. And on that glass, or glassy surface of the moon, the sun rays are reflected in the form of reflected light. And that's why we use that reflected light of the moon at night as a means of seeing, as a means of observing things. Yes. And that's why in full moon, the earth become widely lit, yes, and becomes so beautiful.
Especially in the desert.
To see the light of the moon in the middle of the night.
So mainly the moon acts like a mirror.
It acts like a mirror, exactly. As a mirror, exactly. And of course, up until this present time, not many people can differentiate between an emitted light and a reflected light. Even in English, both are called light. But the Holy Quran a book revealed more than 14 centuries ago to an unlettered prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah's peace, blessing, and mercy be on him. And in an unlettered society, clearly distinguishes between an emitted light and a reflected light. And that's why it reads here in the Quran, in Surah Yunus, هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا. It is Allah who has made the sun a source of emitted light. ضياء. Yeah, you can't find the difference between ضياء and نور in English. هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا. And look at the beauty of distinction between two different kinds of light that of course were not known at the time of revelation of that book. هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا. The sun as a source of emitted light and the moon as a source of reflected light. And of course, as I said, both in English are called light. We cannot find another word really for ضياء in English or for nur in English other than using the terminology of emitted light and reflected light. هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. And look at the beauty of that connection, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has caused the moon to pass into successive phases. The moon revolves around the earth, and both the earth and the moon revolve around the sun. And in this process of revolution, you can get the moon at one moment of its history between the earth and the sun. And the lit half of the moon would be facing the sun, and the dark side of the moon would be facing the earth. And they call this eclipse. Once the moon gets out of that, it will have a tiny arc of light at its periphery. And this tiny arc of light increases gradually as the moon rotates around the earth. It increases gradually until you reach a full moon. And these successive stages can define weeks, can define days very precisely. And that's why the Quran says, وَقَدَّرَهُ مَنَازِلَ, and Allah has established these phases for the moon لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابِ, so that you can know the numbers of years and reckon the time as precisely as you can.
So, Professor, the lunar way of calculating the time is more accurate than the other.
lunar month is more accurate than a solar month. But many people think that the year of the Muslims is only a lunar year. And this is not true. Our year is a lunisolar. So that we can reckon the month by the revolution of the moon around the earth. And we can even reckon days and weeks easily by this revolution, by the successive stages of the moon. But as the moon and the earth are revolving around the sun, they see the sun in every month within a constellation, a particular constellation of stars. And with this constellation, we can define the solar month. And of course, the 12 lunar months are slightly less than a solar month, a solar year, by only 11 days.
Yes.
So because of the proximity of the moon to the earth, reckoning with the moon is more precise than reckoning with the sun. The sun is at a distance of 150 million kilometers from the earth, but the moon is at a distance of an average of 380,000 kilometers. So we can reckon the year by a full revolution of the earth and the moon around the sun, and divide that year into lunar months by the revolution of the moon around the earth. And this is the most precise calendar one can ever use.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Zaghloul. Inshallah, we'll be together again after a short break. Thank you.
Closing the Gap.
Why closing the gap?
In this program, Sheikh Yusuf Estes and Omar Dunlap are going to discuss how to bridge the gap between peoples of different cultures and orientations, the gap between males and females, Muslims and non-Muslims, the East and the West.
Human beings feel like that they're being slighted one way or the other. The gap between the youth and the elders, the gap between various status in the work field and education, and then trying to provide solutions for these particular problems.
Welcome back and continuing our conversation with Professor Zaghloul. The emitted and reflected light.
Yes.
Yes.
What do you want to ask about them?
We want to continue. We finished that the lunar way of calculation is much more accurate than the solar way of calculation.
Yes, but I said that the Islamic year is lunisolar.
Yes.
Not only lunar.
They utilize both.
Both. We utilize both.
Yes.
We utilize the moon for defining the lunar month. And we utilize the revolution of the earth and the moon around the sun to define the year, the solar year. And the solar year is slightly more than the lunar year by 11 days.
Yes.
Or around that. And 11 days are just an indication to man that nothing is stable in that universe. Everything is changing. And if we stick to the lunar year only, of course we would be missing these 11 days. And we cannot define a full revolution of the moon within a year, except by using the constellation in which you can see the sun during the revolution of the moon and the earth around the sun. So, as I said, the Islamic year is lunisolar. It's not just the lunar, it is lunisolar.
But how do we utilize the sun? Because we always find that when we come to an Islamic month, for example, Ramadan or whatever,
yes.
we are following the moon and
Yes.
we're calculating it according to the moon only.
Yes.
So where does the sun come?
The sun comes in for defining the year.
The year, not
for
the month.
For defining the year, not the month.
Yes. How does that happen?
Because once the Earth completes a full revolution around the sun, this is a full year.
Okay.
A full solar year.
Okay.
And how can I divide this solar year? I divide it by the revolution of the moon around the Earth.
Okay.
So our month is lunar.
Yes.
And our year is lunisolar.
Okay.
But the year is made up of 12 months.
12 months, yes.
Right. So that means the moon revolves around the earth 12 times each year.
Indeed.
The year, the earth takes one revolution around the sun.
Yes.
Does this happen precisely when the moon revolutes around the earth 12 times? At the same moment, the earth completes a revolution?
Indeed.
Precisely.
Indeed.
This is
the only difference is 11 days. The only difference is 11 days. And this is for a wisdom. You see, the wisdom is that the month of Ramadan will not fall all the time through a particular climate. Once it comes in winter, once it comes in spring, once it comes in autumn, once it comes in summer, so that you can taste the sufferings of every climate,
yes.
you see,
and
or the
pilgrimage
of every
also.
climate.
The pilgrimage also.
And pilgrimage, yes. Pilgrimage. All the acts of worshipping, actually,
yes.
can change with time. But if you fixed in January, for example, or in March, for example, you will have exactly the same climate.
And we can prepare for it. It will be fixed.
Yes.
We can prepare before.
It's an indication to the continuous change to which everything is subjected to. And only Allah is eternal, without change. But everything in His creation changes with time.
Concerning the light now, so sometimes the moon would be closer to the sun. Is it true? And the light would differ, or because I can't remember seeing a brighter night than when the moon is present.
The intensity of light
The density,
from the moon.
yes. The
Yes.
density of light changes as the moon, or because of the structure of the moon, the light remains that.
Not because of the structure of the moon. Before I answer this question, you raised a beautiful point just a few moments ago. You said the number of months in the year have always been 12.
Yeah.
And this is a very important point because it's mentioned in the Holy Quran إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض. So the Quran is emphasizing the fact that the number of months in a year has always been 12 from the moment of creation until the end of this universe.
And this was due to the counting the amount of revolution of the moon in one revolution of the earth.
No, not for that. What I mean is that this fixation of the number of months in the year, although, as I mentioned in another episode, the number of the days at the very early creation of the earth was much greater than the number of days today. To come down from 2,200 days in a year to 365 point something days in a year now, this means the slowing down of the revolution of the earth around its own axis.
But due to this slowing down, does it change the amount of days?
No, it doesn't change. But what I mean is that although the rate of revolution of the earth around its own axis is changing, yet the speed of revolution of the earth around the sun is fixed.
Okay.
No,
You see,
subhanallah.
and this is for a wisdom, because what defines the number of months per year is the distance of the earth from the sun. And this distance determines the orbit in which the sun revolves around, the earth revolves around the sun. If this distance was slightly lesser, we would have been burned by the sun rays. If it was slightly
Farther.
we would have been frozen to death. So really, out of the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He has fixed the distance of the earth from the sun. But the moon is drifting away from the earth at the rate of 3 centimeters per year. And this means, logically, that time will come when the sun swallows the moon. And the Quran says in one of its established verses, وَجُمِعَ الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ, as a sign of akhirah. وَجُمِعَ الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ.
So the moon is moving towards the sun.
The moon is moving towards the sun at the rate of 3 centimeters per year. And this has been calculated precisely using highly sophisticated equipments. And that's why, logically, scientists anticipate that the sun has to swallow the moon. The moon has to be swallowed by the sun.
But like that, Professor, some other scholar will tell you then you can calculate when.
No, no, you cannot calculate because, as I said, Akhirah has got its own laws and its own conditions. Akhirah comes suddenly. It does not rely on the universal laws of this life.
Yes.
You see, the Akhirah it comes by a divine decree, be and it will be. Come and it will come. So, again, when I publish this, the fact that the moon is drifting away from the sun, and this is a testimony to the fact that the sun will definitely swallow the moon. Somebody wrote to me, this means that you can calculate Akhirah. I said, I cannot calculate Akhirah. Akhirah, the sun will not swallow the moon by this process. But Allah has left that process for us so that we can believe in the reality of the fact that a time will come when the sun will swallow the moon.
Yes.
There's another verse I just remembered right now in Surah Ahl al-Kahf, the people of the cave.
Yes.
When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they stayed inside the cave 300 years and they have increased 9.
Yes.
Can you reflect on this, please?
You see, this is again a very beautiful point about the scientific precision of the Holy Quran. And a point that can testify to what I have just said now, that the Muslim year is lunisolar. It's not just only lunar. Because 300 solar years equal exactly 309 lunar years. And ولبثوا في كهفهم 300 سنين وازدادوا 9.
So if you
300
count
years.
this way or you
Yes.
count that way,
Yes,
it's
it's exactly the same.
Either or.
So 300 solar years equal exactly 309 lunar years. And this again a reflection of the scientific precision of the glorious Quran.
But in the Quran, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guiding us towards calculating using the lunar method?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yani all these notions about the precision of everything in that universe. And when he says, even in this verse, الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. Can it be more clear than this? And he has made this as a sign for you so that you can reckon time and calculate your years precisely.
Cannot be by accident. Cannot be by accident.
Nothing by accident.
No,
Nothing
no
by
way.
accident. And the other verse ends by saying, ما خلق الله ذلك إلا بالحق. Allah has not created this except in absolute truth, absolute righteousness, absolute truth. ما خلق الله ذلك إلا بالحق ويفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون. Allah is detailing these verses for people who know.
Who know what?
People of knowledge.
Of knowledge.
People of knowledge.
Yes.
Scholars and scientists and
Yes.
and
Yes.
It's as if mainly these people will understand these verses.
Well, you see, Islam is advocating seeking knowledge.
Yes.
Through the Holy Quran and through the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find many verses that exalt knowledge and honor seekers of knowledge. And Quran says, هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون? Can they be equal? Those who know and those who do not know, they cannot be equal. And of course, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in many sayings of his sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has encouraged Muslims to seek knowledge throughout their existence, because it's only through knowledge that you can study that universe and can reflect on the greatness of your Creator and reflect on some of the qualities of that Creator who has created this vast, immense, orderly universe according to a fixed plan of His, and nothing is chaotic, nothing is out of order, everything is running for billions of years. The moon is revolving the earth and moon revolving the sun, the solar system revolving around a center of the galaxy, and the galaxy is revolving around center of a galactic group or a galactic concentration, and so on. So everything is precise, everything is very carefully calculated, everything cannot go out of this order, otherwise the whole thing will collapse.
But the sun's light, the moon reflects the sun's light. Is there any other star the moon can pick up the light from? For example, is there any star that has the power as the sun?
Oh, definitely. There are stars much larger than the sun. We call them the supergiants. And the supergiants, out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
they're very far away.
They are very far. Because if they are close to us, they will burn us.
So they also, they can't reach, the rays cannot reach the moon. The rays cannot reach the moon from the giant stars.
It may reach the moon, but of course it will not affect the light of the moon as
like
the sun affects it.
Why is that? Why is that?
I beg pardon?
Why is that?
Because of the vast distances.
Yes.
Okay.
You see, the nearest star to us after the sun is 4.3 light years, and the light year is 9.5 million kilometers. So you could imagine, they are far away from us.
That's not close.
And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning something about the greatness of His creation by giving an oath by the positioning of the stars.
Yes.
فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. And inshallah we'll come to this in another episode. Inshallah.
You wanted to
I
say?
just want to ask about, you just said that there's another star that is, or stars,
Yes.
that larger than the sun in different groups.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Oh, there
so
are
that means,
many.
That means that we have maybe, just want to listen to your...
Maybe what?
Maybe we have another life over there, maybe another...
As I said, Allah says clearly in the Holy Quran that He has spread life in that universe. And no intelligent person can imagine that we are only in that vast universe. Because the earth is a tiny little speck
Right.
really of a grain of sand in an endless ocean of sand, you
Right.
see. And of course, logically, we can accept the idea that life is spread everywhere. But as I said earlier, it's in the form that does not necessarily be of exactly the form of this earthly life.
Yes.
It has to suit the conditions on these planets or in these different heavenly bodies.
Very good.
And, okay.
No, continue, please.
I would like to emphasize here that the fact the Quran tells us that Allah has spread life in the universe does not mean that we have to go beyond what is being spread after UFOs and the green man. And these are fantasies that are not linked to science and cannot be scientifically proved.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Zaghloul, for your time. And thank you, Brother Fuad and Brother Mustafa. Inshallah, till next episode. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Boom, 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 boom.